Inner child work. We're hearing so much of that, right? On the internet and on social media. It's made a renaissance lately. It actually was extremely popular in the 60s and 70s and now has had a renaissance, which I love because I am a huge fan of inner child work. In fact, if you want to read a great book, read Richard Schwartz's book, No Bad Parts. And he talks about parts work, which is basically inner child work. So this video is really about that, about how do you get to know your inner child. It's actually inner children. There are many, many, many of them. And how do you heal them? Because here's the thing, you may not even remember this, but there was a point in your life where you were in full alignment, in complete flow, in complete awareness of who you were, how you kind of connected with the world, and how much you are worth, which is everything, right? You are worthy of all the love in the world. And at a certain point, and maybe it was just for a very short while, you knew that. You came into the world understanding that. But then we have our life experiences and our families of origin and the traumas, the big T and the little t traumas. So big T traumas like sexual abuse, physical abuse, abandonment, emotional abuse, addiction in our families, and little t trauma, neglect, hypercriticism, bullying, illnesses. Death is another big T trauma, So there's all of these traumas, many, many, many of them. And in our entire childhood, in many cases, if we weren't given enough love and we were never given enough acceptance or approval, which children, confuse with love, then we have some inner child work to do. So basically every human on the planet has some inner child work to do. So how do you do it? Now, there are many aspects of yourself, many inner child parts of yourself that you may never become aware of, or there's so many of them, right? So it's not a matter of identifying every possible inner child you have and making sure you excavate those. The parts of you that are most impacting your life, your relationships, your love life, whatever that is, those are the parts that are going to show up most, okay? And think of it as these little abandoned parts. So here's how those parts develop. Let's talk about that first. They develop as a coping strategy. It's literally like something happened. It could have been a moment, or it could have been an elongated period of time where something bad was happening. And that you at that age and stage, it's almost like a little bubble formed around you. Like you got stuck there, a part of you. Obviously the rest of you grew up, and to the rest of the world, you're the age you are and a grown up, but there's still a part of you that is that age. So I always envision like this, a person standing there and they're all these, it's like a puzzle. They're a puzzle picture of all these different little forms of themselves from the time they were babies, all the way up. And those child parts are thinking with a child's mind. So that if you notice in your life that the rational part of you, the grown-up part of you knows that that guy or that girl, whoever they were, was bad for you, and it's a good thing you broke up with them. Right? Or of course, that your worth isn't based on how much is in your bank account or how many friends, like that as the adult you are now. And yet you feel such a charge around it. You feel so much pain around it. And there's a discord between what you know as the adult you are now and what you're feeling inside. Ding, ding, ding. That is a sign that an inner child is driving the bus, right? Now, the way that we connect with those parts of ourselves, as Richard Schwartz would call them, or those inner children, as others would call them, is by embracing them, is by recognizing that there is no bad parts and getting to know them and talking to them and connecting with them the way you would to a child that age, right? So that may look like, I just did this morning, so I'll give you this example. I was feeling really fat and unattractive, and I've been losing weight, I've been exercising. There's no reason for me, I could make myself feel ugly and unattractive, but I knew that it wasn't really about that. I knew that I was just struggling with some body image issues, and I also am already familiar with this 10-year-old little part of me that when I was 9 or 10 years old and my body started changing, there was tremendous shame attached to it. My mother and even my grandmother, my mother's mother, you can see how these traumas get passed down, started telling me, you don't have to clean your whole plate. You're going to get fat. Be careful what you eat. Do you really want that dessert? No, don't eat that cookie. And again and again and again. And then, of course, I started putting on weight. And then all the comments started about how I looked not so good and how it wasn't very attractive and how I needed to wear something more flattering, or I needed to wear something to cover my arms because they were too chubby, or whatever it was. And so it started when I was 10. And over the years, as I've done work with that part of myself, that part that feels unattractive because of her weight, like that's her source of value, because it was my mother's source of value. She started me on Dexatrim. I'm dating myself here, but she had me on Dexatrim when I was 13. So I literally went I'm friends with her now. I've done some work where I've gotten to know her, and I'll talk a little bit about how to do that in a second. But I went to the mirror, and this can be a form of inner child work, and I do it all the time. And I looked deeply into my eyes until I could see the 10-year-old's eyes. I called her forth. It's like, come on, 10-year-old Laura, let me see you. And I looked deeply into my eyes, and I was like, honey, you're fine. You are beautiful. You are working so hard on your body, but you are perfect exactly the way you are. You are healthy. You are strong. You've brought life into the world. You've been through cancer. You've had so many things. You've had death. You've had so many reasons to protect yourself with weight, with padding. It's okay now. You not only can release the weight, but you don't have to be in a hurry. Right? So I literally was talking to myself, to that part of myself, and it went on, the way I would a 10 to 11-year-old. Another time you may literally talk to yourself like you would a 3-year-old. Listen, I've got you now. You don't have to be scared of this because we are protected. I'm going to make sure that nobody hurts us. I know that you didn't feel protected then. We didn't feel protected then, but I am here now. You can relax. I'm going to keep us safe. They're all there to keep you safe, right? All those little parts develop to keep you safe, to keep you from feeling pain, or to keep something bad from happening emotionally, right? Or physically or literally. So they have to be soothed, understood, seen and accepted and protected. And when they feel that way, just like when a child feels that way, they relax their hold. They no longer have to try to shove you out of the driver's seat and take the wheel. Okay? A key way of exploring and healing your inner child parts is by also doing somatic experiencing, which I'm a huge fan of. And that's really one of the most powerful forms of trauma healing there is. So make sure that you explore in your community, looking for someone who is a therapist who specializes in somatic healing and trauma healing, because they naturally, by doing that, as you resolve the energy and the remnants of that trauma and its hold on your emotional system and your body, physical system, then the hold of those inner child parts starts to loosen. And finally, you want to explore parts stuff and parts work. So what that means is anytime you notice you're having a big reaction to something that doesn't feel good, maybe it's fear, maybe it's depression, maybe it's anger, anxiety, there is a part of you that is feeling that way, because the whole of you, this is what I'm always talking to you about, your essential self, your true self is that perfect self that came in. She, he, they are still there. Most of you is that pure love that understands how worthy of love you are, that's tapped in and tuned in. That is your essential self, your God self, your true self. And then there's all these ego and insecurities and parts of ourselves on top of that, right? But and this is what parts work promotes, I never want you to say even, I'm anxious, right? I have a part that's feeling anxious right now. I have a part that's judging myself right now because of XYZ. I have a part that's just really, really hurt and feels really abandoned by what just happened. And once again, being with that, excavating that, understanding that. And the final thing I'll recommend to you, I'm actually have in a separate video. And in that video, I describe to you a somatic process you can go through to identify those inner child parts of yourselves that may need some inner child healing work. So make sure to check that out as well.